For this video, I'm going to change from having the browser next to my code editor to having it full screen. We're going to be looking at the layout, and it'll be much easier to see the changes this way. The first thing we need is to differentiate this article on our article page from any other articles on our site, as this CSS is affecting both pages. Let's add a class to the article. If we take a look at the design, we can see that we should use the wrapper class for the content as well, because it's fixed to a width and doesn't get any wider. In our HTML, we already have a div around the body of the article, so let's add our wrapper to that. In the design, the body of our article has more space in the middle of it than any of the other wrappers we can see in the header, in the article header, or in the footer. So we can target our wrapper that's inside our article 1 and just add the appropriate padding to that. Let's add an article section to our CSS. Here, we're just targeting the wrapper that's inside our article 1. We're going to use our padding shorthand again. This time we're going to use 3 values. The first one is the top padding, the second one is the left and right padding, and the third one is our bottom padding, because there's more padding on the bottom than there is on the top. We can see, however, that the padding has been added to the width of our wrapper rather than including it. We're going to have to change the box sizing to fix this, but let's do this on our wrapper class so every wrapper is affected. Now the padding in the wrapper is also included in the width that we've set, and this content is sat further in than the content in the header. This article already looks pretty good, because we've already done our base styling for our text, including our headings and our paragraph, so there's not a lot else to do for it. The article header, however, has a unique layout. It has an image on the back, the category, the title, and then the author image, the author, and the date all in a line. If we look at our HTML, we can see that the heading comes first, and then the category tag, which is the opposite order to the design. But before we take a look at that, let's take a look at how we set the image, the anchor, and the date in line together. We'll have to add some HTML for this. Let's add a div around these elements and give it a class of its own. We can now add Flexbox to this class to get these elements to sit in line. We want to make sure that they're vertically aligned center, so we can use our Align Items Center for that. Now we can style each of these elements in turn. If we look at the design, the image is round with a white border, the link is white with no underlined text, and the date is white text as well. Let's start with the image. An element being round in CSS World means that it just has big rounded corners, so we can emulate this with border radius, set to 50%. We also need some space on the right, and also a white border. It's always a good idea to add these kind of flourishes like a border in your CSS because the image itself might not come with it. The link is white with no underline. And also has some space on the right. We should add a hover class to this as well. So when we hover over the link, it changes. We do this by adding a colon hover directly after our element. The date has got white text as well. That's pretty good. Now we can take a look at the vertical order of everything within this header. We can display it flex and change the direction to column. Let's add a class to the header element so we're just targeting this one header in our page. Now we want to change our flex direction to column. So each element still sits one on top of each other and not next to each other. This means that we need to set our align items to flex start. So they're on the left of the header. We don't see too much difference at the moment. But what that allows us to do is it allows us to select the category element and change the order so it sits at the top. As each item that is displayed with flex has 0 order by default, or as its initial value, if we just make it one less than that, it should jump to the top for us. We can use our wrapper div to get all our items in the center, just like before. So let's add a div with a class of wrapper inside our header. You'll notice now that our flex has stopped working. The business category is now sitting underneath the header again. This is because we've modified our HTML, and flex only affects the direct children of the element that we put it on. If we check our CSS, we'll notice that we put the display flex on the article header. We actually need to put it on the wrapper, which is now sitting inside the header to take effect. Also, both of these wrappers that are sitting inside of our article body, our article 1 here, this one and this one, are both getting affected by that extra padding that we put on for the body. Let's target just the body wrapper specifically. We can do that by adding another class to this div. And then in our CSS, modify where we put that extra wrapper padding to use that class instead. But because the element now has 2 classes, instead of putting a space in between these classes, we're just going to write one class directly after the other. This means an element with both of these classes. That's much better. We've got our wrapper for our header, which is the same as the main header for the page and for the footer. And then it's only this body wrapper that's getting affected by that extra padding. Now for our article header, let's take a look at the design. We need some space on the inside and we need the background image. Let's go back to our article header. And include that styling. So we need some extra padding. Top is quite a lot. Nothing on the left and right. And something a little bit smaller on the bottom. And then we can add our background image. I'm going to use background shorthand here. So we just use our background property. Then we have to put the colour, which I'm going to set to a dark colour. Just in case something happens to the image, it will show the white text on that header. Then we put our URL function with our image in. Now we have to go from the CSS file to where the image is, which means we have to come out of the styles folder, which is where the CSS file is. It's slightly different from HTML because that's already outside of the styles folder. Once we've done that, we can go back into assets, into our images folder and select our image. In this shorthand, we can also add our repeat value, which in this case is no repeat, and where we want the background to be placed, which is in the center. One other thing is adding a background size of cover. This means it will always fill the available space in the header. The only thing left to do is to set that H1 to the colour of white. So let's target just the H1 in that article header. This looks great. Let's keep the border on our wrapper divs for now, so we can use it when we come to style our landing page, which is next.